Zibi, Kena, bonjour tout le monde. Verna, Nidishnikas, Kitigan, Zibi, Nindojaba, Wagosh, Nedodem, Shechonim, Kipenesi. What I said is Verna McGregor is my name, and I'm from Kitigan, Zibi, as Maxine said. And I said Fox is my clan on my mother's side. Nimki Penesi, which is Thunderbird, is my clan on my father's side. That would be our official introduction when we would go into different territories or different communities, areas. Why? Because also our talk today is about the Riverkeepers, and really quickly for us, our clan system was based on the river, the watershed. And so prior to contact, we were still known as the Omamawinini, which means the Nomads. And why were we nomadic? Is because that the understanding is if you stayed in one place, we were hunters and gatherers. And if you stayed in one place, you overharvest the resources because and unlike today, we didn't have the dependence on farming. It was working with the land, so we harvested wild animals, but also too as well the plants and medicines, and we would follow the migration too as well. So it was a different understanding, as I always say. And why did we have such big hunting territories? Because the understanding was if you stayed in one place, you overharvest the resources, but also you start to damage the water. And it was giving that understanding to give the earth or the land to heal itself. So I'm going to start my presentation because I only have 20 minutes. Usually I could talk all day. Really quickly, I say Kwe Minwashin Lodge and Donakitage. I work here at Minwashin Lodge, which is the Indigenous Women's Support Center, but my background has been really varied. I worked in forestry. I started off, I studied economics. I went to more in economic development. I was the economic development officer. I worked in banking. I worked in real estate. But I've always returned back to my community. And I sat with the elders all these years too at the same time. So it was like this, they have this talk today about two-eyed seeing. It was looking at the mainstream and also looking at our understandings too. So this is just our logo here. And again, why do you have the woman at the center? We call the earth Mother Earth, because like a mother, the earth provides everything here for us to have a good life. And for us, one of our teachings is that we have a responsibility to look after her. And it's always about that balance of the male and female, and that we are part of the earth and we return back to the earth. And that's what the logo is trying to portray. That also too as well. So we need to become also caretakers. Next, please. I do a lot of openings in Ottawa here, so je parle en français un peu. No, je ne sais pas ce but at the beginning, I always say, welcome to Turtle Island. We call it Mekanakinising. And why did we call North America Turtle Island? Because again, and I took this from Facebook here, if you look at the Earth from an aerial view, then they said, how did our ancestors know that America looked like a turtle? And that's tied to our creation stories too as well. And for us too as well, the turtle has the 13 sections on its back. That's tied to also the connection with our governance, and I don't have time to go into that, but the 13 too as well is significant for us too as well. We had 13 moons, and the 13 grandmothers. But the 13 moons too as well is tied to also the moon where again, because we call her grandmother moon, because she also um, impacts the waters, as you see with the tides. So, and if you talk about this balance, there's the balance between the male female. You have the grandmother moon and the grandfather sun, and they both interact with each other in the rotation of the earth. Um, Next, please. And again, too, as well, for us as Algonquin, we have our own creation story. And on the side, it represents, this was done at the Jacques Cartier Park about 5 years ago. They did a display showing our understandings. And here's, for us, we have the trickster on the right. And again, it's tied to the creation and of Mother Earth. And you see the turtle's back here too as well. And it was the trickster giving a challenge to all the animals if they could go and dive after the great flood to bring up Earth and and bring it back to the surface. And that led to the creation of Turtle Island here, which is North America. We have our other nations have their own creation story, and the most notable one also is the Haudenosaunee, the Iroquois. Their creation story includes a sky woman coming from the sky and also down to the earth. And again, too, as well, it's that contrast between the male and female, and the understanding is that although our roles are different, we complement each other, and that it didn't mean one was superior to the other. That you complement each other to bring in the next generation. It's also about the sacredness of new life. Next, please. Oh, I always talk about the significance of Ottawa for us because I do a lot of presentations in Ottawa, but where I'm from Kitigan, Zibi. And again, when we talked about the clan system based on the watershed, the significance of Ottawa is that you have the confluence of the rivers coming together from the four directions, and we would meet there in the summer and talk about what's going on the land. So the significance is that confluence, and we meet at the Chaudière Falls, and the falls were also very sacred. Um, we would offer offerings to the water, and it's that understanding too as well. I would start with a smudge here, and again, if you've ever gone into like a First Nations community or a ceremony, they'd start with a smudge. And why we do that is also the fire is very sacred and the water is very sacred. So when you light the smudge, you have the fire going up, the smoke going up, and it's our understanding that it's our connection from the physical world to the unseen world. So going back to the Chaudière Falls, they would offer offerings there too as well, because it's our understanding. The offering goes from the physical world, you offer it to the water, but the steam or the condensation that goes up to offer whatever it is we're asking for to the sky world. So it's that connection again from the physical world to the unseen world. And really too as well with the Ottawa River, I have a story of that too as well. The Ottawa River watershed, similar to other watersheds, but for us as Algonquin, we were the first to meet the explorers, most notably Samuel de Champlain, and a lot of you know him because he is close to where you're all located by Quebec City. We met him in Tadoussac in 1604, and when he came here, he saw all the richness of the land, and we brought him up the Ottawa River, and that started brought on the fur trade, the mineral resources, but the resource extraction started also with the cod fishery. And you look at today too as well, if you look at the state of the cod fishery, there was also too as well the overharvesting of that. So and also came the timber and the extraction of timber, and even up to Quebec City, It had the world's largest extraction of timber because of the resources here. So with the timber, though, came also the need for electricity. And so today, the Ottawa River watershed alone has 52 dams on it. And that brought in a different understanding too, as well. It displaced us also away from rivers. And there's stories too, as well, when the dams were made too. What happened is it changed the current, the flow of the current. And they also became sometimes a little too dangerous. But in addition to that, we have the issue of, for us, while that was happening with all this exploitation, we had the colonization of the people, and we were to get us off the land and stop, and to really, it's an erosion of our understanding as to why we were nomadic. Next, please. Again, this was the Chaudière Falls when before it was dammed up. And again, you could hear it. It was so powerful. You can hear it about 3 kilometers away to 4 kilometers away. And again, with the dams, that changed the whole flow of things. Next, please. The significance of Ottawa, too, as well, with that confluence, is with the medicine wheel and its many teachings. The medicine wheel, if you go into a lot of First Nations communities, you'll see that. And it represents, again, first of all, the biggest teaching to that is it represents the 4 colors of people. You have the white people, the yellow people, the red, and the black people. And the biggest teaching of that is, although we may have different colored skin, different understandings, different language, different history, what binds us together, whether we like it or not, is that we're all connected by the earth. It also represents the 4 elements that are essential to life, starting with the earth. But you also have the air, the water, and the fire. It also represents the 4 directions. It's cold in the north, warm in the south. The sun goes up in the east, goes down in the west. It also represents the need, at the center, it represents the need for balance. You balance your emotional, physical, spiritual, and mental. It also represents your earth walk here. And our understanding is that you come from spirit, which represents the north. And you see the line between the white and the yellow represents your first breath here as you take your earth walk as an infant, and as you progress down from infancy to toddler to adolescence into adulthood, you go into the different sectors in the adulthood in the West, which they call that the Western door, in preparation to return back to spirit, back to your ancestors, back to Creator or God or whatever you call it. It's that honoring everybody's circle. Next, please. Really quickly too, as well, going back to the Ottawa River too. Last year, I worked with the other Algonquin communities, and we secured an island on the Ottawa River, which is Fitzpatrick Island. And we're in the process of also developing it into an Indigenous protective conservation area. Why that was so important to as well is that it had such a rich history, but also too as well, it was the need for us to reconnect back to the rivers. And we're hoping to turn this into a learning facility, also research facility for the next generation. Next, please. Really quickly too as well, why we were displaced away from the rivers and the water is that, again, you had the creation of the Indian Act in 1876. For us in Kitigan Zibi, our reserve was created before the Indian Act in 1853, and that's a long history too as well. Again, too, as well, it was to get us off the land so that the land could be given to the newcomers coming in to Turtle Island. And again, too, as well, why I say that too, as well, is because also we also had issues today. We have a pandemic today, but this is nothing new because we've also had for, the smallpox as part of this colonization, and it was used as a weapon too, as well. And we have a history back in our community. There was also pandemics like the Spanish flu and the TB. What they said, there's an estimate that prior to contact, they estimated that there was about 112 million indigenous people. They're not sure how much, but by the time 1650 came along, there was only 8 million left, if that, 6 million. Going back to the Indian Act too, as well, people don't know that we also had the pass system where you needed a permit also because you're confined to the small reserve. But at one time, you needed a permit to leave the reserve, and you needed a permit from the Indian agent to return. And that was to also keep us in the reserve system, and at the same time too, as well. So they were also taking the children away to residential school. So and it restricted the parents and grandparents from leaving the reserve to go and also retrieve their children. The post-secondary education, again, I'm so honored to talk to you, all you educated people today, because for us too, we're playing sort of catch up to with post-secondary education because you needed a permit at one time to, not a permit, you had to enfranchise to attend university or post-secondary education. And this was only removed out of the Indian Act in 1965. And other restrictions too, because you weren't allowed to hire a lawyer prior to that same time. That was removed around 1958, I believe, and that was all part of the Indian Act. The residential school system, again, too, as well, was a taking of the children. The first school started in 1831, and the official system was in 1883. And this led to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and that was done in 2016 release. The other things that were impacted a bit is also the murdered, missing Indigenous women and girls. I work here too as well because I have my own history within our community of the women going missing. There's 60 Scoop, where again the child welfare system, the taking of the children, which was an extension of the residential school. The Indian day schools, that was just settled about 2 years ago. There's an issue too as well of the sterilization of Native women, and recently too as well there's the Human Rights Tribunal on the child welfare. Next please. I'm going really fast because really, and then as this was going on too as well, there was also the confiscation of our sacred items, because at one time too our gatherings and ceremonies were outlawed. But there was also the confiscation. While this was going on, there was a confiscation of our sacred items. And these are the wampum belts. And the middle belt is significant because I think we are here today. It's called the Seven Fire Prophecy Belt. And you have the 7 diamonds in there. One of the teachings is that we're here for the next 7 generations. And the 2 colors represent the contrast. It's honoring the contrast of 2 views. They're actually called peace belts because it's like, how do you weave in contrasting views so that you coexist together? And one of the things too as well, when you start with, is the male and female. On top is the sharing belt of 1701. And the understanding with that is that with the coming of the French and the British here, because the Algonquin were in the middle really, it was the understanding of the sharing of the resources in equal parts as brothers and sisters. And of course with colonization that didn't happen. The bottom one is the Jay Treaty Belt. And the understanding is prior to contact, we had no borders. We were free to roam around on Turtle Island. And that was the understanding also too, even with the border between Canada and the United States. So that's what this represents to. The seven fire prophecy belt, going back to the middle one, is they said it predicted the coming of the newcomers to Turtle Island. And it said that we're going to, at the prophecy is that there'll come a day where we will be at a crossroads where there's going to be too much overdevelopment to the detriment of the next 7 generations. And we're going to come to a point here, and that's what the middle diamond represents, the crossroads of we might have to reevaluate what we're doing to the earth, because if we continue on the same path, it would lead to the detriment of the next 7 generations. And one of the predictions is it's the revisiting of indigenous knowledge and understanding, the seeking out of that. And I find that funny here today when you look at all the reports, even today, that we're on the path of the 6th mass extinction. And I said, are we at a crossroads? I think so. And one of the things too as well is the prediction of the water. And that's why I'm so honored to be here to talk to you about this today, because one of the predictions too, and it's already there, that not everybody will have access to safe, clean water, that one day water will be priced similar to gold, if not even more. And I think we're almost there. And again, looking at the state of the water on the earth, it's always remembering that only 2.5% is actually potable water. And we think that they used to think that water is we had so much clean water. But if you look at it today too as well, that's becoming a major issue. And I know that you know that really well. One of the biggest things too as well is for us, one of the teachings is this interconnectedness. And for that's, and you see that scientifically today too, approximately 70% of our bodies is composed of water. So there's the teachings of that. And at the bottom here, that's my uncle's, most notably the Elder William Commanda in the center. He was the carrier of these belts. And here they are in the 80s. He went to make a presentation at the United Nations, and they call it the Cry of the Earth. And back then, he was trying to raise that awareness that we need to look after the earth more and he was presenting the belt. And at that time too as well, they had trouble. There was a lot of resistance, but I think there would be less resistance today. Next, please. Now, going back to our teachings, now, one of the biggest understandings is that women are the keepers of the water and men are the keepers of the fire. And it goes back to that the male, female balance each other. That although our roles were different, it didn't mean one was superior to the other. That the male and female balance, the women are the nurturers and the men are the protectors. Why? Because also too, so you need that balance in order to bring in the next generation, the children. And I get questions a lot of times that go, well, what happened? What about the two-spirit and the LGBTQ, the acronym? And going back to our understanding is that it goes back to that medicine wheel teaching earlier, that we all come here with our own gifts and our own knowledge and ways of knowing. And we start our journey also of gathering knowledge. But at the end too as well, one of the biggest teachings is that we all belong in the circle. that nobody's, and in the teaching of the circle, as opposed to the hierarchy in the circle, nobody's above anybody and nobody's below. That although um, some may have different knowledge, it doesn't mean that uh, they're superior. It means that also we come here with our own gifts and understandings. And I think with you being here today too as well, you all have your own gifts, especially also with in relation to water. Next, please, and the caretaking of the earth. Again, I'll just pass the next one. This is just more pictures of our indigenous perspective. Really quickly, I'm just going to check my time here. Oh my God. Okay, really quickly. I've been speaking a lot to climate change in Climate Change Canada. And I said one of the biggest things I think why we come in here today is exploring the contrast. And I think it would lead to also maybe also innovation, and we may have no choice. One of the biggest things again too as well, there's our lodging on the top. The Algonquin were known for the Pikogan or wigwam, and it was temporary. And it was that understanding of being also nomadic, but also too as well the understanding is what we take from the earth needs to go back to the earth, and it was temporary. And at times too, when you would construct that too as well as a reminder, you would use a live tree. That also too as well the reminder that we look after Mother Earth. Compared to today, where we have our subdivisions, the only problem with that is it's nice that we have our heated homes and in a safe shelter, especially today when it's cold outside. But the problem is also sometimes too as well, now we have an issue of sprawl and how much of the ecosystem have we destroyed. For us as Algonquin and other nations too as well have their own method of travel. We traveled with the birch bark canoe. There's a lot of teachings to that too as well. And I do a lot of openings, and I said, you know, we travel carbon free uh, with our canoes, and it goes back to the earth. As compared to today, if you look at the how we travel today, but also now, what are we doing to the earth? And that's part of that seven fire prophecy. Next, please. Again, really quickly, this was my grandson brought me an acorn, a bag of acorns last fall, and it reminded me of also too for the Algonquin because we were on the river. We buried our departed by the river, but when we buried them we wrapped them in fur blankets, and we would put an acorn in the mouth of the body. And it was that understanding, though, too, as well, of reciprocity. Sustainability is reciprocity, meaning while we're alive here, too, as well, we have the oxygen from the trees, but we release carbon dioxide. So that reciprocity is when we die, too, as well, we become the tree because our bodies feed the tree through the nutrients of our bodies decomposing. And so again too as well as we go back to Mother Earth, so it's that system of reciprocity understanding. And again too as well it's that contrast as compared to today where again we have the cemetery. Why I say that too as well is I think it's exploring different understandings. It's not that one is superior to the other, but maybe too as well I always think that that's where innovation can come from is by exploring different understandings. Next, please. And again, this was just a structure. Really quickly on top, this was for Canada's 150th birthday, and I worked with Manuel Baez, who's the professor in architecture at Carleton, and this was a structure for the anniversary. At the bottom, it represents Mother Earth and all the rings. There's a cross section of the rings, but he put the four benches representing the four colors, but the four colors of people on this earth coming to Turtle Island. So the circle in the middle is Turtle Island. On top, it represents the dream catcher. The dream catcher, one of the biggest teachings is also too as well, it represents the spider teaching. The spider weaves the web of life. And that also too as well, because it's a reminder that everything is connected, including the work that you do. And I like it too because it's looking towards the universe, because it includes the connection to the universe, the skies, the earth. And one of the biggest teachings, and you'll see that as researchers in water, what we do to the earth, we also do to ourselves, because water connects everybody. When we honor the air too in our prayers, the air, this COVID-19 is showing us today how we are all connected also by the air. In addition to the fire is also the sun shines on all of us equally. There's the internal fire of the earth and your internal fire of being alive. So again too as well, that's what we're trying to capture with this structure. Next please. And then this is my last slide, because it was 20 minutes I went over. One of the things we said too as well is it's becoming aware that we need to become caretakers of the earth. And I think the big clash of understanding is even land ownership, that we own the land when really we don't own anything, but we need to become also caretakers. And with women as the keepers of the water, men are keepers of the fire. One of the elders, when I first started in this violence file, they said, as we are addressing the violence against the life givers, which are women, why are we keepers of the water? We bring in the next generation. And when why? Because when you're about to give birth, you break your water to bring in new life. And the men are the spark of that too as well, with fertilization. I always said that that's a nice spark. But also too, so what the elder said is, as we're addressing violence against the life givers, maybe this will also lead to addressing the violence to our biggest life giver, which is Mother Earth, and it's becoming aware that we're caretakers. So really too, one of my backgrounds too was I was the economic development officer in my community at Kitigan, Zibi, and one of my projects was the making of the maple syrup. We call that always Zibi pure maple syrup. While we were doing that, we had a state-of-the-art processing facility, which we had like the reverse osmosis, the evaporators, and the tubing system. But while we did that too as well, we brought back the traditional understanding of maple syrup, which is tied to the water teachings. And one of the biggest teaching of that too as well is with the running of the sap in the spring. That is also, we do the water ceremony then too, because it's a sign that Mother Earth, with the running of the sap, is breaking her water to bring in new life. And that's what happens in the spring, is that's when new life starts too. It's a rebirth. So on that note, that's some of our traditional water teachings. So if you don't mind, I'm going to sing you a little water song. What the elders would say sometimes too as well, if you're by the water, which I don't know a lot of you are, don't forget to thank the water, to offer a little tobacco sometimes to the water for all the gifts that it brings, because our understanding too as well is water has spirit, and we need to come back and honor the water. Sitting with the elders all these years too as well, one of the stories came up too historically, especially my mother. She would say that with contact here, they found it strange that with the newcomers coming here, that they would really put their or pee in the water, the sewage in the water, and then today they said they turn around and they clean it and they drink it. So they said it was so strange that they didn't like it was the honoring of the water. So that's why I think it's so important that we're here today, because I think it's a reminder that also too as well we're on a learning journey, and that there's still room for innovation. So I'm going to sing you a little song. I won't sing the whole song because we're really quick. We're out of time really, but it goes like this. It's a little water song that we'd sing in the spring, because it's the cracking of the ice which signals the need for the water ceremony and to thank the water for all the gifts. So it goes like this. Nibi wapo ninayan Aki miskwi nibi wapo Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. What I'm saying is, in the song, really, when we do it we would sing this to the four directions. And what I'm saying is that I am made of sacred water, and sacred water is part of me. But the water is the lifeblood of the blood of Mother Earth. And our understanding also too as well is that the rivers and streams are the veins of Mother Earth. So it's like your body, you would look after your veins and your arteries. And I think that's why it's this awareness that is needed. So I say, miigwech, thank you very much. And if anybody has questions or observations, I thank you for coming.